Christine Brennan just exposed the WNBA in a major way.
Christine Brennan is one of the best sports writers in the country, has been for a long time.
Caitlin Clark is way more important to the WNBA than Tiger Woods was to men's golf, even though he was huge. And to then see this negativity, like why and what should have been done? I looked seriously at the leadership of the WNBA. And how could you not be prepared for this moment? You've seen it happening in the Big Ten. You've seen it at Iowa.
The WNBA just got exposed in the most embarrassing way possible. Legendary USA Today journalist Christine Brennan decided she'd had enough of the nonsense and dropped a truth bomb so massive it practically flattened league headquarters. We're talking about receipts, pettiness, and a complete gutting of the WNBA's credibility when it comes to how they've mishandled Caitlin Clark. It's a brutal look, one that should have everyone from the commissioner's office to jealous vets shaking in their squeaky shoes. And seriously, what do you think? Is this epic faceplant by the WNBA all about jealousy over Caitlin Clark, or is it straight-up clown-level incompetence? Let me know in the comments below if you think WNBA players are jealous.
Came out, what she had to say in this book was going to shake the ground of the WNBA. She's been around for a very long time, and she knows the inner and outer workings of this league. Christine Brennan let it be known in multiple interviews that the WNBA was not ready for a superstar like.
So, here's how this absolute soap opera began. Christine Brennan, who's covered more women's hoops than half the players in the league have been alive, decided to write a book. And not some cutesy yay girl power fluff either. Nope, she went full investigative pitbull, tearing into how badly the league bungled the once-in-a-lifetime Caitlin Clark moment. This wasn't just a spicy hot take. This was scorched-earth journalism, and the aftershocks are still rattling the WNBA.
Don't get, Christine, is that in the case of Tiger and in the case of Jordan, the other players and the league around them, in Tiger's case, the PGA Tour, realized that a rising tide raises all boats and were incredibly supportive of Tiger and Jordan. With Caitlin, it seems like, for whatever reason, she's polarizing. Like she's been hit with more flagrant fouls than any player ever this year. They tried to come at you when you were writing a story and said, don't ask questions about why people don't like Caitlin Clark. But I'm going to ask you, Christine, why is she polarizing in your opinion? Why do people not embrace the phenomenon that is Caitlin?
Brennan didn't show up to hand out participation trophies. She pulled back the curtain on just how clueless, jealous, and, frankly, lazy the WNBA power structure was when the biggest star women's basketball has ever seen landed in their laps. Caitlin Clark isn't just another prospect. She's the singular force who took the WNBA from background noise to center stage. And apparently, instead of popping champagne, the league was popping antacids because they hated every minute of their own sudden relief.
One of the big points in the book, I deal with all of this and my research and reporting, because I was perplexed as well. I mean, this is the greatest moment ever for the WNBA. Yep. We wish it happened sooner. Of course we wish it happened sooner. There were amazing players who, as you know, both you guys know, were toiling in obscurity. The male-dominated mainstream sports media ignored.
Here's one of the jaw-dropping nuggets from Brennan's expose the day after Caitlin officially declared for the 2024 draft. She called up a senior league official to get their take. You'd expect fireworks, right? Hype, confetti, cannons. Try. Again. This league exec, dead serious, told her that Clark entering the league was the biggest thing since Maya Moore. Maya Moore, no disrespect to a legend, but outside of hardcore hoopheads, Maya was basically invisible to mainstream America. Most folks couldn't have picked her out of a grocery line.
Like everybody else. And I think, guys, that actually helped me understand as a journalist the fascination, because I've covered a lot over my career and been very fortunate to be at Wimbledon's and Super Bowls and Tiger Woods and you name it, I've covered it. And I'm so lucky to have done that. And I found myself fascinated, like, who is this? And I'm getting text messages from guys who would never have watched a second of women's basketball. Good guys. They want their daughters to play sports. I mean, good people, but just And they're texting, are you there? I'm watching. Are you seeing this performance? And that told me something that I actually was very helpful to be at home watching it versus being on press row, talking to a bunch of other journalists, that okay, there's something going on in the country here. And it's everyone's fascinated and people are standing in line for hours in the cold around the Big Ten, this barnstorming tour. And it's all about a basketball player who happens to
And this is where Brennan's decades of experience shine because she instantly recognized what these clowns didn't. Caitlin Clark wasn't just another great player. She was about to become a cultural avalanche, one powerful enough to bury every stale narrative about the WNBA being a niche sport, while clueless execs were busy comparing her to stars who barely moved the viewership needle. Brennan could already see what was coming. The entire nation was about to be strapped in for the Caitlin Clark show. And how did the league respond to this priceless heads-up? They sat on their hands and did absolutely nothing. Honestly, it's almost impressive how incompetent you have to be to miss the easiest marketing layup in sports history. But it only gets more jaw-dropping. Brennan's book lays it all out. The Windsuits didn't just fail to prepare for the Caitlin Clark effect, they couldn't even imagine it. They were so used to sitting on the backbench of pro sports, so conditioned to irrelevance that they literally couldn't fathom a world where people actually cared about their product. Picture running a bakery. And being stunned when people show up to buy bread. That's the level of pathetic Brennan uncovered.
Unauthorized, which is not ominous at all. You want it to be unauthorized because I can tell the truth, unvarnished. Caitlin's quoted throughout the book. She was great answering any question I asked her, but dealing with these important issues. So you've got a 74% black league. We understand this. I mean, I'm white. You know, Ramona, I think you guys are white. We have no idea what it's like to be black in America. And I say that. Let's be brutally honest here. Here comes a white woman from Iowa, and she's going to be the biggest superstar. Now, absolutely, the spotlight's shining on her. Finally, it's shining on all these other players who deserved it for years but never got it. And that's a wonderful turn of events. But instead of focusing on the positives, sadly, the WNBA players, so many of them, not all.
And it's not like no one saw this coming. Brennan's reporting makes it crystal clear that plenty of journalists, and even YouTube creators, had been tracking Clark since her Iowa days, practically waving neon signs that she was something special. Her fan base was massive, engaged, and ready to buy out arenas the second she turned pro. But the WNBA front office, apparently, they couldn't even be bothered to look up from their spreadsheets. Meanwhile, the stats told the whole story. In 2023, the Fever's attendance hovered around 4,000 per game, basically the size of a Texas high school gym on a slow Tuesday. Then Caitlin Clark shows up for a preseason warm-up, and suddenly fans are lining up 2 hours early, like it's a Taylor Swift concert. Security was stunned. They'd never seen anything.
And an antagonist. And I've argued that the NBA could use a little bit more of hero and villain to popularize the sport again. The WNBA does not need that because for a lot of America, Caitlin Clark is the hero. And anyone that comes to Caitlin Clark's defense is a hero. And everyone that flagrantly fouls her, speaks poorly of her, acts like she's not great is the villain. And then vice versa on that. How big of a part of the story is that when you look at the conflict surrounding Caitlin?
So, how did the WNBA capitalize on this tidal wave of new fans? Did they roll out the red carpet for their generational cash cow? Launch dazzling media campaigns? Of course not. They responded like grumpy old neighbors, practically irritated that all these new eyeballs were finally paying attention. It's almost as if they preferred their quiet little pond to suddenly becoming the ocean. Absolutely unreal.
Grown men on talking head shows wanting to fight each other over women's basketball and talking about it, right? We've got all these hot takes about all this going on, Christine. How big of a part of the story is that for you, and is that for this book?
I deal with it for sure in the book. And, you know, I think what we've seen is surprising to me. Having covered women's sports as well as men's, you know, for the length of.
The jealousy that Brennan uncovers is, hands down, the most damning part. Her book reveals a deeply rooted bitterness simmering just beneath the surface. Players, league officials, ex-Elvin legacy media figures simply couldn't handle the fact that Caitlin Clark, barely a rookie, was drawing bigger crowds and more airtime than veterans who'd been grinding for over a decade. Suddenly, the gyms were packed. The ratings were through the roof. Every podcast wanted a piece, and it was all thanks to Clark.
Caitlin Clark, and let's say it, and I say it in the book. I'd go into this in depth. A white woman from Iowa in a 74% black league. That's an issue. The book is the first real journalistic look at this entire season and at Caitlin Clark and what she's done. And all these issues that are out there, no holds barred. I shy away from nothing.
And instead of celebrating the fact that a rising tide was lifting everyone's boats, the league and some of its players responded with icy cold shoulders, cheap fouls, and snide little quotes. Refs started swallowing their whistles. Media scribes began cranking out think pieces complaining that Clark was too popular. It's like someone handed them a winning lottery ticket, and they complained it wasn't
The way players like Diana Taurasi, Brianna Stewart, Cheryl Swoops with her flurry of falsehoods, Cheryl Reeve, the Olympic coach, Gina Auriemma, really tried to minimize her and were very critical of her. That stunned me. You should be saying, this is great. You don't have to cheer for her. You guard her. You play tough. She's not a victim. She loves to throw it at people. She's feisty and tough out there. And that makes her, I think, even more appealing to so many people. But for this group of people to want to say such negative things and be so wrong about her, okay, fine. It's a free country. You can do what you want. But what she's doing by going into the WNBA.
The craziest part, how obvious all of this was to literally anyone paying attention. Caitlin Clark's for years at Iowa were a masterclass in building a national brand. She broke records, sold out arenas, and basically turned every sports exec into a WNBA fan by sheer force of personality and game. Anyone with half a clue could see her. Following would come to the league with her. Everyone except, apparently, the very people whose actual job it is to grow women's basketball. They were too busy playing gatekeeper to notice. The gates had already been blown off the hinges. Brennan also digs deep into a cultural sickness, festering inside the WNBA, one that made this meltdown almost inevitable. There's apparently a twisted mindset in some corners of the league that believes mainstream popularity somehow taints the purity of their game, as if millions of new fans, sold-out crowds, and massive TV deals are some kind of sellout sin. Book exposes how that thinking seeped into the way Clark was treated all season long. Instead of being protected and promoted as the face of the league's future, she was allowed to become the target of envy-fueled hacks. Players took cheap shots, coaches made salty passive-aggressive comments, and the media tried spinning it like Clark was getting too much attention. Imagine being so backwards that you're offended your league finally matters.
Clark is way more important to the WNBA than Tiger Woods was to men's golf, even though he was huge to men's golf. And to then see this negativity, you'll probably, the next question would be, or your viewers and listeners are probably saying, okay, so like why? And what should have been done? And I look seriously at the leadership of the WNBA. And how could you not be prepared for this moment? You've seen it happening in the Big Ten. You've seen it at Iowa. You see these TV ratings. 4 million more, as I said, watching the women than the men. I think it's worth repeating a few times because it is such a stunning statistic.
What's painfully obvious is how the league completely face-planted the biggest marketing opportunity it's ever had. They were sitting on a goldmine. Caitlin Clark was generating more buzz than the WNBA had seen in decades. And somehow, they fumbled it like they'd never even heard the word promotion. The merch situation, a total clown show. The scheduling, a series of baffling decisions that looked like they were picked by drawing names from a hat. And the overall marketing game plan. It felt like it was run by people more suited to managing a lemonade stand than a professional sports league. Brennan's book makes one thing crystal clear. This wasn't just accidental incompetence, it was deliberate blind eye syndrome. Had mountains of data proving Caitlin Clark was their ticket to the moon. But they clung to the safe. Small world, they knew, terrified of what real success might look like. And now, here we are. Smack in the middle of Clark's sophomore season, and the league still doesn't seem to know what to do with the monster. Star power they've lucked into. TV ratings are still going bonkers whenever she plays. Her jerseys and sneakers vanish faster than limited edition Jordans. Every arena she steps into is sold out, packed with screaming fans like it's a rock concert. And yet, you still get this awkward vibe that plenty of people inside the league wish the whole Caitlin Clark circus would just disappear so they could retreat back into their cozy little echo chamber.
And so we have that moment with these two. But the one thing I know about sports, you need rivalry. That's what makes people watch. They want to watch games of consequence between rivals. They don't want everybody being nice to one another. So the social media is different today than it was in 1979 when it didn't exist. But, I always tell the players, I was told a long time ago, if someone's typing something in and you wouldn't ask their advice, ignore it. So it's a balance, but certainly from a marketing dollars, but corporate partners are stepping up to endorse these players much more so than they were 5 years ago.
Brennan's reporting absolutely torches the league by revealing just how deep the dysfunction truly runs. You've got a league that was on financial life support, barely clinging to relevance and praying for anything to keep it afloat. Then, walks in Caitlin Clark, a generational superstar with mass-market charisma, who attracts crowds, TV deals, and sponsors like she's flipping a switch. And what did the league do? They treated her like a nuisance, like a squeaky door they couldn't be bothered to oil. If there's ever been a bigger example of an organization actively working against its own interests, I'd love to see it. the implications go far beyond women's hoops. This is a textbook case study in how big institutions get so stuck in their outdated ways. They'd rather sabotage the future than embrace change. The WNBA was literally handed a lightning bolt in Caitlin Clark. All they had to do was protect her from jealousy-fueled drama, market her brilliance, and watch the money and respect roll in. But instead, they chose petty resentment and small-minded thinking. It's like they were offended that success showed up wearing a ponytail and an Iowa jersey.